I do believe that a lot of the knowledge that is already out there for us, like the relapse starts in your brain. Like you're thinking about it before it even happens. You're not thinking about drinking. I think a relapse starts with entertaining the idea. And the thing that I feel like stops a lot of us is that when we're at that stage of entertaining the idea, that's not when we go and seek for help. We seek for help later.
Happy Sober Day, friends. Welcome to the Sobriety Diaries. My name is Nate. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic, 7 years from my last drink. The Sobriety Diaries is a video podcast where we share powerful stories of recovery told by those who lived them. Check us out at thesobrietydiaries.com for all things podcast related. And for all our video interviews, head over to youtube.com/Nate Kelly. Also, please share this podcast with just one person in your life who may still be struggling. You just never know what they may need to hear today. Recovery is possible. Let's open the diary on my friend, Odette Cressler. Odette, so good to see you again. How are you, my friend?
So good to see you, my friend. I know it's been a hot minute, and listeners, I've been avoiding this interview for a hot minute. I've had a pretty rough year until the last couple months. Things are looking up a little bit, but I was very appreciative that you reached out again and that I get to share today. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was saying I was tiptoeing that line of nudging you to schedule time together and not pushing things because life happens, right? And that's, I think, a great sort of topic that I usually bring up in recovery chats is life is still happening around us, right? And for me, I just sort of know how to navigate it now, which is a plus.
Yeah, it's life on life's terms, one of the AA cliche catch lines that I think holds so much truth to it. For me, control is a big part of my personal journey, and life on life's terms, or life continuing to happen, is basically the opposite of, grasping and control. So it's a big thing for me when things get shaky, the relinquishing of control and the surrender process that comes time and time again, no matter how long it's been that you've been on this journey.
That sort of re-surrender is very humbling, isn't it? I still get compliments and DMs in reference to our first conversation. And I must say that Odette brought out in me one of the rawest and emotional and truthful conversations that I've ever had in my life. Interview aside, podcast aside, just conversations that I've had in my life. And it was an experience for me. And I think looking back and listening to the episode, it was just kind of this perfect timing of everything that happened. And for me, it was an experience. I don't want to speak for you, but I still get DMs about people that have just heard the episode or come across the Sobriety Diaries through Recovery Elevator. And, I was saying before we started to record, I have the tendency to set expectations for myself because we had such this powerful sort of first meeting, but I'm wiping those clean. I sort of just want to have a cool, chill conversation and get to know your story a little better today.
Of course. And it was very powerful. It was one of those interviews where I felt also wrapped into the emotion. And I remember exactly where I was, where I was sitting, the time of day.
You were on the road.
Yes, I remember everything so clearly. And I feel like it happens in recovery. We haven't talked much since, and there was this connection that was formed for the both of us, and it was very neat. It's one of the gifts of recovery for sure. Those bonds that you just start linking up. So special. So thank you. And you will have to drop that episode in the show notes for people that haven't heard it yet.
I absolutely will. Okay, so I want to sort of invite you to start where you want to start and share what you want to share. And let's sort of walk down the road of, what got us to the point in which you sought out recovery and sort of your journey since. And then we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah, sounds good. I actually recently came back to saying yes to sharing, and this is my second interview in a long time. But the first one was a couple of weeks ago for NAMI because it is now October, but when we recorded that, it was September and it was recovery month. And they told me that the interview was going to be 20 shy of like 23 minutes. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, when they asked me, share your story, I normally don't prep for these things, but I was like, I need to make sure that I make this concise
To the point.
because I've been on in recovery for so many years now. And for me, my journey started with like my first diagnosis was depression when I was 15, like clinical depression. Um, at that time, my dad's alcoholism was progressing. However, we were both kind of flying under the radar, him with his drinking, me with the depression. I have always been, and I think continue to be, um, just someone who's kind of going against what socially is normal in their environment because I look like a very normal person that why would I be the weird one? But I liked books a lot and I didn't want the TV in my room. And my dad was like, why wouldn't you want a TV in your room? That's so weird. Like I was out of my siblings, kind of the odd one. And I don't know, it was surprising for me to be diagnosed with depression because I'm a kind of a glass half full person. It's easy for me to see the good. But anyway, I got diagnosed, and 3 years later, my dad checked into rehab. His alcoholism progressed pretty intensely from when I was 15 to when I was 18. And when he went to rehab, I started really experimenting with an eating disorder. I was very restricting my whole life. On the yearbook from high school, the superlatives and the little things were like most popular, most
Yeah.
la la la. Mine was like the one who was always on a diet. Like that
Oh,
was my
Lord.
and like a photo. Like it was so bad.
Isn't it
Um,
crazy what is sort of acceptable to shine a spotlight on or acceptable to discuss now versus when we were younger? It's
so
crazy.
strange. But
So
anyway,
crazy.
it was more on that side for a while of just eating clean and being on a diet. And then slowly, as my dad's alcoholism got worse, I also feel like I was getting worse, but I was kind of on the sidelines. He was the big story of our family, and he was the one who had to go checked in. And I was a little bit more smart because us addicts tend to be very strategic
Oh, yeah.
about our addictions and how to protect them and how to defend them. So I was doing my best to maintain my secrecy and maintain my friend. I was diagnosed with what is called EDNOS, which is eating disorder non otherwise specified. So I was not a bulimic, I was not an anorexic. I was kind of this person who oscillated between them both and kind of played in the arena of whichever one was convenient. Like if I
Mm.
couldn't find a place to binge and purge, then I would just not eat and be more on the anorexic side. And so even that diagnose was like weird and like you're not a bulimic, but you're
Right.
not an anorexic. What are you then? And like with depression, you're not someone who cries all day in bed because I'm pretty high functioning.
Yeah.
So you're not really a depressed person. And then when I decided to pursue sobriety, same thing. You're not that of a drunk. You're not that person who's had, all of these tragedies happen. So I feel like as an overarching theme for me, it has been extremely hard to make sometimes people understand how much of a hell I sometimes live in because I'm a gray area everything, a
Yeah.
gray area eating disorder person, a gray area depressed person, a gray area drinker. And even though it's been really frustrating at times, I also really like sharing that piece because I know that there's so many people who listen or are curious or wonder, you know, do I even fit in these spaces because I'm not a low bottom, addict.
Right.
I've never tried cocaine. I'm kind of like that person who, I don't know, I was like low on the spectrum in terms of external spectrum, but I feel like deep in the internal spectrum. So that kind of has been a mind F that I've had to navigate
Yeah.
through therapy. But anyway, first was the depression, then the eating disorder. I kept it safe until I couldn't. 1 year into my marriage, everything kind of exploded. My husband didn't know that I was struggling. I had a crisis. I had a big meltdown, and I decided to check into rehab at like 20, I think it was 24. It was inpatient, I mean, outpatient, because I would drive there, stay the whole day, drive home, work shifts at the restaurant. I went to school for restaurant management, and I
Mm.
weirdly love food.
Yeah.
For someone who really struggled with an eating disorder, it's a big part of my culture, a big part of my family and our traditions. So that's how I kind of started the more serious recovery process through rehab, because I had done therapy for many years. I'm a big proponent of it, and got better. I was that person who was, thinking and saying, I need to hurry the F up in rehab because I can't afford to come back here. It's expensive.
Right.
And I don't want to waste my time. And I've always been that straight A, just get it done right student. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. No questions asked, which is a big red flag now for me when I think about, my children who don't ask any questions. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have questions? What are your concerns? What are your
Yes.
doubts?
Yes.
Um, anyway, so I did kind of ace recovery because it was important for me to get in a healthy mindset. I really wanted a family. We wanted kids, and I was obviously not getting pregnant for a while, attempt after attempt. I knew exactly why that was happening. But I did end up getting pregnant and conceiving maybe 6 months after I left treatment. So I am very still indebted and grateful to my body, because I know I wasn't being kind to my body at all. I was starting to kind of lose my periods during some months, which is a big sign in the eating disorder world of
Oh,
like you're
yeah.
really, affecting your insides, because I also fall in that, like, you don't look like you have an eating disorder, but your organs, my organs were starting to fail in that sense for sure. But and this rehab was specific to my eating disorder.
Mm.
I didn't really pick up drinking like consistently until after, because alcohol is calories. And if you have an
Got
eating
it.
disorder, you're like, I'm not going there. I wouldn't drink because I knew that it was liquid calories. So
Yes.
um once I conceived, I had daughter. 2 years later, I had a son, and all of that time working through the reps that come with eating disorder recovery,
Mm.
which is kind of like you confront your addiction every single meal. You can't quit food. You have to heal this relationship with food. With every other addiction, is like, let it go, doesn't
Right.
serve you. Tell alcohol, tell drugs to get the F out of your life. Here, it's like, I need to keep eating, keep a healthy relationship with food. And also for me, it's been extremely top of mind to model behaviors with food to my children that are going to allow them to have a different relationship with food than I had. What I thought was normal was definitely not normal growing up. But anyway, that
Can I
was,
ask just
of
really
course.
quickly if your other siblings displayed any behavior or mental health concerns because of, maybe not because of, but we talked about your dad's addiction. Do we see it displayed in your siblings in other ways?
Yeah, my family's very sick with codependence, and we have a beautiful family. I'm actually currently with my therapist trying to process family of origin stuff, because same, my family people were like, we could have never like, what's wrong with your family? Look at you guys. My family is a very Instagram versus reality kind of family, where when my dad went to treatment, nobody knew he was on a business trip, So um, I'm still right now having a hard time reconciling what happened and how much dysfunction existed. because I get very protective of my family. Like
Sure.
they were great, and like my parents were amazing, and they did the best that they could. And my dad has been in rehab for 13 years. So he changed our family. He changed the trajectory of our
Yeah.
family. And I haven't allowed myself to access a lot of anger and negative feelings that I do have towards them. So I'm like really trying to process that in therapy right now. But anyway, codependency
Got it.
still. And one of my siblings, I have two, but I won't name the one in case
Yeah,
he or
I
she
didn't mean
listens.
to
No, but
have you
one of
tell
them,
other people's story,
of
but
course, but one of
yeah.
them recently had a big anxiety episode. And I was obviously concerned. We were all concerned as a family, but my first thought was, thank God. Like it
Yes.
needed to come out. I can't believe my
Yes.
dad has been sober for this long and you haven't shown any signs of this. Like it's in there, but how is it coming out? So definitely it's still in our veins, in our family bloodstream. And it's been hard because my father and I are the ones that are kind of, my mom calls us the crazies,
Yeah.
literally,
Yeah.
my dad and I. And I, to this day, which is back to what I was sharing, I get very resentful because my ego tells me that I'm doing work for people in my family that aren't. And there's like all these memes of like, the people that go to therapy are the ones going to therapy for the people in their life that don't go to therapy.
Right.
And I'm like,
yes.
My family, like my
Yes.
mom refused to go to therapy, even though her husband, and they get along so well, her best friend, struggles with this. And it's affected all of these years still, even though there's been many wins in our life. And I also want to credit that. It's family systems are crazy because they do get infected. And I do feel like it requires everyone to take inventory on themselves, their life.
100%.
So that's
I
been
relate to that specifically so
tricky.
much with my siblings recently having these sort of life episodes or life experiences where, I mean, she's 3 years older than I am and hasn't really experienced something that would, to your point, the heightened anxiety or, talking to a therapist, and it's like, bitch, now I've been I'm 10 years going on with my therapist, and it takes sometimes these large events for, at least for my family, for them to realize the benefit of therapy or recovery from anything.